It's a, as you know, it's a free event. It's been a free event for years. Just an opportunity to get together, share ideas, collaborate, grow, and learn together. Probably one of the single most valuable things that I have done as a full-time real estate investor, business owner, even just life in general for the past 10, 12 years. So I loved being a part of stuff like this and doing meetings like this. If you are not on our email list and you want to get added, there's a paper on the back, the table in the back that has a QR code you can scan, or my email is on there as well. You can send me an email. If you are on our, or if you thought you're on our email list and you're not getting emails, it's probably either because they're going to junk because of, I don't like to blame things on other people, but MailChimp tends to do that, and that's what I use. So MailChimp can be a little tricky. So if you're not getting the emails and you signed up, they might be going to junk, or you might not be getting a period, I don't know. But anyway, if you want to hop on our email list, that's how you do that. We also have a call blast list. If you don't have email and you want to get notified of the meetings, we do have a way to do that. It's not quite as convenient, but I can get you on a call blast if you want to do something like that. These meetings, like I said, free meetings, and they are paid for by sponsors. So we have 5 sponsors that have paid for the cost of meetings for this entire year. They are Joe Liowski, Compass Property Management. Joe's the guy that started this meeting almost a decade ago. Jeff Moore, I'm not sure if Jeff is in the room tonight. He's a private lender, great guy to connect with. Dave Wolf, PMG Mortgage. Dave has been to our meeting a number of times. Nate Rittenhouse with Lanco Federal Credit Union, and Benio Esch, local realtor here. So those guys are the guys that are paying for your seat tonight, and very helpful in making this happen. Along with that, we're going to have Joe, Compass Property Management, talk a little bit about what they do, and yeah, he's going to tell us a little bit about what they do and what he might have to offer for you.
We manage properties. Imagine that. Compass Property Management manage properties. Both. So anyway, good evening. Good to see everybody. Yeah, I mean, Jay's saying it's May's meeting already. It's kind of hard to believe it's May, but the weather's finally starting to change. In the next couple of days, maybe we'll have some warm weather to be able to open the doors and windows. I don't know about you, but I did not miss the snow plow bill for this year. For those of you that have, parking lots and things that need plowed, it was nice to get a reprieve from that. Although we did have this one guy that had this ridiculously high utility bill. So I called him up and said, hey, we got to get together, we got to sit down, we got to figure out what's going on here. This bill's just way too high. When can we schedule a time? He goes, oh, don't worry about it, come on over anytime. My door's always open. So a good way to get away from the cold weather, go down to Florida. Went down to Sarasota, went to Pinecraft, and I swear half of you guys were down there. Went to the other side of the state and went to St. Augustine, and they are bragging about how it's the oldest city in the country. I didn't know that. It was there in the 1500s. The Spanish were there long before it was a country. There was a city there. And Flagler College, guy was trying to bring civilization down to Florida. He put the railroad in Flagler College, and Edison put the electricity in there, and there's these Tiffany windows. They have 22 Tiffany windows in this college building, and it's the most Tiffany windows in any building in the country. And they're like, yeah, it's great. We got these 22 original Tiffany windows, and Edison put the electricity in here. And the lady in the back says, yeah, you sound like you got the same landlord that I do. But anyway, so we can shut the door on high utility costs. If you're looking to manage long-term rentals, we don't do short-term rentals. If you want help with long-term rentals, advice, or just management through long-term rentals, give Compass Property Management a call. Hopefully we can help you out. And if not, we can aim you in the direction of maybe somebody else that can. And I guess that's it. I'll turn you back to Jake, and I guess I'm not quitting my day job.
There you go. Thank you, Joe. Very good. All right, next up we're going to have another market update from Benio Esch. Benio, you can come on up. Benio and his team have been doing these quick snippets of local market updates for us for the last probably 4 or 5 meetings here. And it's just been fun seeing what they come up with. just for a little bit of a snippet of the local market update, what's going on, where we are, where we're heading, and why we're heading there.
Jake is definitely exaggerating when he says we're going to tell you where we're headed. We're just guessing, along with the rest of you. So I'm going to keep the market update piece of it pretty brief tonight. If any of you weren't here last month and you'd like to see what we presented then, we went a little more in depth. I'm happy to share that with any of you guys. But this is one that was requested, so I figured it'd be a fun one to share. This is the average list price or median versus the average sale price for the last 10 years, and it's a pretty cool chart. So imagine going back to 2013, 2014, 15, and consistently getting like a 10% discount. As you can see, that hasn't been happening as of late, and yeah, well, I mean, that's been a few years now where you pretty much we've gotten really used to putting something out there and getting the number for it. So see how that plays out, but that's an interesting trend. But what I'd really like to get into tonight is, for those of you that are familiar with Darren Hardy and what he puts out there every day, he put out something pretty cool the other day that I've had some fun conversations around since then. He's basically talking about, okay, you can spend a whole bunch of time getting fixated on what's to come, trying to figure out what's happening in the market, trying to get a step ahead of it, and there's a place for all of that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but he proposed the idea that, hey, what if you instead spend the bulk of your energy on figuring out the things that don't change, and that's where your time goes. So focus on market fundamentals. And I would also translate that into focusing on the things that you can control. So as investors, it's really interesting to think that through. A big part of how I think through this and how you can grow this to the next level is focus on your highest leveraged activities and work on delegating the rest, or if it doesn't serve you, maybe just eliminate some of it. And a part of where I've found success with that is focusing on two things. One is growing the portfolio. It doesn't really matter if you're making a 15, 20, 50% return on 100 grand, or whatever a small number may be to you, but if you grow that to 10 million or 100 million, whatever big number is to you, that return now becomes something really impressive and something that can help other people and can expand way beyond you and your family. So that's one piece, grow the portfolio. The other piece is managing it well and continuing to grow better at that as time goes on. So I think as an investor, if you focus on those two things, those are two things you can always control. Those are two things that nobody is going to take from you. Those skills are going to stay with you. If you focus on those two things, the market whatever the market does, that falls into place over time. So if there's something you want to take from me tonight, that's what I would give. So that's what I got for tonight.
Thank you, Ben. That's good. If you're used to listening to the Darren Daily, you've probably heard that, I think, about a week ago, and I really liked that one as well. It's a lot of things, especially with technology, Chat GPT, some of you guys are hearing about. I kind of like to stay a little bit in tune with that stuff, but I really do think if we focus on some of the things that don't change and build off of that, it can be worth our time doing that. So we are gonna turn this guy off. I think it'll turn off eventually. So if you read the email, you know that we have a panel discussion tonight with a couple experienced, relatively young local investors. And I'm pretty excited to kick this thing off and just engage in a conversation and see what we can learn. These panel discussions always bring out just a broad perspectives. It's real life stuff, it's fairly local stuff, and seems to be pretty relatable for most people. So you guys can come on up here, grab some chairs, guys, and we're going to see if we can get that thing turned off. There we go. Thank you, Amos. And I think we've got a couple extra lights we can turn on here. So, okay, well, I'm going to introduce these guys to you somewhat briefly, and then I'm going to get them to tell us a little bit more about what they do. I'm going to give you guys some mics, too. We are going to have to share a little bit. Hopefully you guys don't mind. Check, coming on. Check. I think it'll work. You guys, if you don't mind, well, we can put you over here too. So, anyway, so it's important that you guys know that we really don't have it all together up here. I mean, I can't speak for you guys, but really, I remember going to meetings, 10 years ago, and I thought, well, whoever's in front of the room must have it all figured out. Like, they got all this experience, they're used to speaking, it's like all of that. I'm here to tell you, that's not how I feel. I don't know how these guys feel, but it's simply a thing of like, there's a lot of value in, so these guys have all had a tremendous amount of growth in the last 5 to 7 years, whatever, and we tend to always like look ahead and we look up to other people, which is good, and we can kind of compare ourselves with people that are like way further down the road, and sometimes we need to also realize that, look, we have overcome some challenges. We are down the road a bit further than we thought we would be by now, maybe to some degree. And sometimes we have to look back to see what we actually have kind of learned. So hoping that's a lot of, or one of the things that kind of comes out tonight, especially for you guys that are just getting started. We were all just getting started not all that long ago. So Dave Ash, first one here. Like I said, I'm going to introduce these guys briefly. I'll get you guys to tell us a little bit more about what you do. But Dave and his family live in Pira County. They have a couple big Airbnbs, cabins out there, small hotel in Halifax, some long-term rentals, did a couple flip projects, and that's all since like 2015. A lot of it much more recently. So they've really been killing it kind of as a family business somewhat. Jake Stolzfus was working for B&D Structures until only a year or two ago. Had been doing some investing before that and is now part of a team that owns and manages over 21,000 acres of woodland in a couple of states, which is mind-blowing to me. Anxious to hear more about how you actually make money on a bunch of dirt and trees in ways that I never knew you could. So we'll be drilling Jake for some of that stuff. Benji Stolzfus from up close to State College. They own a couple campgrounds, a couple pet boarding facilities, which is a whole interesting topic. They've got a bunch of land and an Airbnb in New York. And so we got a broad range of things here. A couple of topics actually that I used to think there'd be no way you can make money in it, but they seem to have proved me wrong. So Dave, why don't you start by telling us two things, kind of how you got started and what your day-to-day, like where you got started and what you're doing now. Or how you got started and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure.
If the green light is on.
Test. Yeah, sure. So I'm glad that he, warned you guys that we're not pros at this, but I'm disappointed that he doesn't expect more. So yeah, I started, actually, a friend of mine, Roy John, some of you guys know him, dragged me along to a Robert Kiyosaki course in Harrisburg. It was a free seminar, and I got sucked in. I didn't buy the big course. I think we each paid like $100 for some books, and then I bought a house with Mid-South, down in Memphis, Tennessee, when I was still, had a full-time job. And so that was my start in the real estate. I never did see that property. I sold it last year for profit. Never ever set foot on the property. So that was, I think it's kind of cool. And then right now we have, a couple million in real estate. A lot of it is short-term rentals, cabins. We have a small hotel that has a mixture of short-term, mid-term, long-term, a couple mobile home lots and some storage. So it's kind of a unique property. And then we still have one long-term rental as well. So we homeschool and raise amazing kids, and so that's quite a fun season to be in for us.
Yeah, okay, so, like you said, I worked for B&D Builders construction company for about 11 years, and in the meantime, acquired a couple rental properties and, a couple investments. And then, now I spend most of my time with Acquire Timber, and we buy timberland. And, so a couple things we do is obviously the timber side is the biggest part of it. And then also, we bought our first portfolio, 11,000 acres out in western PA in 21, and a couple weeks after settlement, there was a solar company that contacted us and said they were working in the area there, trying to get a hold of the sellers for about a year and a half, and they didn't want to be bothered with it. So yeah, it looks like we'll end up putting a solar field on that couple hundred acres on that property. And then we did another tract, same with the part of the same portfolio that we have under solar easement or option as well. You know, so between timber, solar, we are developing a couple of tracts for short-term rentals, and of course the hunting leases. Yeah, there's a couple of different avenues you can go. We're also working on. We have a guy that lays out some of these tracts, you know, like 100-acre chunks for hunting properties. He lays it out on a map, like, hey, you guys probably want to put a food plot here, put your trails here, here's where you put your stand, here's where you put your blinds, whatever. And then we'll sell those as turnkey hunting properties, you know, the smaller 80 to 100, 120 acre property. So, and then there's other smaller land sales that we've been doing, where most of these have been neighbors that have looked at this and yeah, weren't able to take down the whole portfolio, but they always wanted to own that 80 acres right behind their property or whatever. And so we've been able to sell a decent amount to, I mean, a couple of smaller ones to mostly neighbors for, I'm not sure what is it, 3 times or so, 3 to 4 times, you know, what we gave per acre, just because it's a smaller chunk. So yeah, that's kind of a short story of what I do. That's how we do.
Sounds good. All right, so yeah, I got started 5 years ago. A really good friend of mine, my business partner now, kind of invited me to sell everything I have and move from Lanchester County to Tyrone or the State College area. And I guess I was one of the only ones crazy enough to actually do it. So I was in debt up to my eyeballs, and I kind of saw myself as being a sink or swim situation where I had to make a change. I was like $50,000 in debt, credit card debt in there, and I could hardly make my mortgage payments. I was lucky enough to sell the house for a profit, and I went from that to where I am today. I think last I checked, I think my net worth's around 1.8, something like that. So it's been a wild ride the last like 5 years. Got started with campgrounds first. I got started with a property management company first. We managed the apartments that between the three of us. I'm a part of a partnership. There's 3 of us, and one of us owned 50 units in Tyrone. So we started a management company to manage that. And then on the apartment side, we purchased 86 units in Chambersburg 2 years after that. That one we have a different property manager running, a big company. Shortly after, it was actually before that anyway, I was kind of the whole side of the apartments, and then we started with the campgrounds about a year after I came out. Bought the first campground. Long-term hold strategy, it was just a good opportunity. We knew the owner. Well, we met the owner through a failed opportunity, a contract that fell through, and then we wind up meeting him, purchased that campground, and then I ran that one for a year, and then a property just down the road from there came up for sale that we purchased. It was an old church camp. We're turning that one into a campground. And what am I missing? Then the kennels would have started about the same time we bought the campground. We bought the first dog kennel. So it's a high-end dog boarding facility is what we like to call it. So people drop off their dogs. They go on vacation. We call it kind of a vacation for the dogs. Some of our higher-end facilities have TVs in the rooms for the dogs. It's not your typical kennel, I guess you could say. It's a little more high-end. It's crazy the way the dog industry has been, the connections people have with their pets. I mean, I don't think it's something we're going to get into, but we're starting to hear that maybe we should try. People are actually starting to do dog weddings.
So it's a market we're not quite sure we want to dive into yet, but it's been intriguing learning more how people interact with their pets. So we're told with a pool that it's to be a perfect venue for them, but we haven't ventured into that yet. Anyway, so we bought the first kennel, that was about 3 years ago, and then we just kind of found a little bit of a niche there. It was a lot of mom and pop run dog kennels that were kind of not really mismanaged, but they just kind of lost the vision, so we started buying them. So we would have 4 locations now, 1 in Chambersburg, 2 out in the Pittsburgh area, and 1 down in Maryland, Oxford, Maryland. And then we purchased a warehouse in the Chambersburg area that has a dog operation in it. We're going to be taking that one over in the future at some point as well. So, if I'm missing anything, and then we also, we got the 700 acres up in New York there. We have a 5-bedroom Airbnb that we run. That we bought that so we have a place to go when we go hunt. So we just happen to run it as an Airbnb. But anyway, so what I do. My main position within the partnership is running the campgrounds. That's my main priority. I focus on them, so that's what I do.
So you had said your business partner John is
Yes.
mostly running the kennels, right?
Yes.
Is he here tonight?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I told him not to come. I told him I'd be more nervous that way.
Okay. Well, so that means I'm going to have to hit you directly with these questions. So we're going to bounce right off of that.
Okay.
And I would like to get just a little bit of an idea how this dog boarding actually works. So let's pretend I'm a customer with a dog, all right? So I got this 65-pound golden doodle. I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. I need you to take care of my dog. What's the best room that you got for it? How much is it going to cost me?
That's a great question. Probably would depend on the time of year or some, but I'd be scared to say exactly. I mean, your most expensive is probably getting close to, I forget what our suite was, the sunroom suite. I think it was like, well, I'd be scared to say a number. I'm thinking like $60
You can make it up. We don't know the difference.
That's like $60 a night or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And it has a TV in it?
That one does not. Well, depends which facility you're in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
That one wouldn't actually, the one I'm thinking of,
Okay.
but the one facility is more like all the units are more high end, so they would all have TVs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So can my dog pick what he's watching, or who
No,
decides?
so
what
we
the dog
always
is
say
watching?
that all the asset classes.
Like
that
cat
we make-
videos, right?
Yeah. No, definitely not. We try to stay away from that. We don't want to stress the dog. No, we always say we're in the, all the different asset classes that we're in. We're not in individual industry. We're in the people business.
Sure.
It's like the TVs are not in the rooms for the dogs. The TVs are in the rooms for the.
Right, but I'm the customer, and I'm concerned about what my dog is watching.
They
there,
don't
so-
care. As long as they know something's on, they don't care. I mean,
Gotcha.
it's for the customers. The dog doesn't watch TV.
Right.
The dog
right.
could care less. The dog's outside, doing his thing. They don't care.
Sure, sure.
It's all for the customer.
And I'm also really concerned about that my dog gets like a good breakfast and just top of the line
Yep.
stuff. So
we
what's the
started
best
doing,
thing?
Yeah, so recently we started doing some like food options. So we threw an option and we do scrambled eggs in the morning. So we'll scramble eggs for them and give them that. We have a bunch of different cool add-ons. We'll do exercise time. So like they'll pay $20 and we'll walk them in a 100-yard loop around the meadow. And then we started playtime, cuddle time. We do peanut butter balls. We got all kinds of options. Ice cream treats. We do ice cream treats as well when it's hot. So,
Is that a question there?
Yeah. What about a hot tub or a pool?
So we don't have a hot tub. We do have a pool at the one facility where we haven't started using that yet. It's something we're probably going to get into, but we're not using it at this point for the dogs. Yeah.
So are those all add-ons then? Like they
Yes.
pay extra for the?
Correct.
So
Yes.
how much extra? So that's $60 and then.
So they'll pay
charging, like,
$20
Disney
for a
prices
nature
for
walk.
Ice cream, like $10 for a little.
Yeah,
thing?
something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do they? Okay, so
If I'm missing my pet, can you live stream it so I can
Yes.
just watch?
Yep. So we give that as an option. So like they can. I forget how it is. I'd be scared to say without. John's gonna watch this video later and be critiquing everything I say. So you said it all wrong. But I think there's an option they can pay extra. I think each day where they can go in and I think actually when the girls do the nature walk, they take a couple pictures with the pet and send it to the customer for an additional charge. So actually that one might actually be included in the nature walk now that I think about that. We don't have live stream at this point where they can actually log in and see it. That makes us a little bit nervous with the girls going in to clean and different things, but we clean the runs every single day, so we haven't done the live stream yet.
Do you have an app for for the owners so they can check on their dogs?
Not at this point. That's a good idea, though. Well, I'll write that down.
Absolutely.
A lot of it would probably come down to a trust factor, like a lot of other things in
Yeah,
business,
definitely.
obviously. If they trust what you guys are doing, but it's fascinating. I mean,
And it's a
an
lot of
industry.
return customers as well, so
Yeah.
that's huge.
You know, when I first heard about that, I was like, well, this is just stupid. Like, why would somebody, like, why is this even a thing? But the reason it's a thing is because people have pets that mean a lot to them, and it's good, and it's a business opportunity. And you guys saw that. I mean, you probably weren't the first, but you're obviously going down that path of providing a service, filling a need for someone, and yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So, all of you guys started, I mean, in the last 10 years or less probably, taking the jump from working a job to going full-time into real estate. Not quite sure about your background on that, Benji, and you touched on that a little bit, but why don't each of you guys, Dave, why don't you start? What was that transition like, jumping into real estate full-time? Was that scary?
I can't say it was really scary. Probably the light bulb for me was, it was a very liberating thought when I finally accepted the fact that I can spread my own wings and do my own things and don't have to, work at one place and live at one place. I was in the family business, and just when the thought entered my mind that, hey, you could possibly do your own thing, then all of a sudden it's like everything opened up. So it was a couple-year process where we were doing flips on weekends. We were Amish at the time, so we'd get a driver to take us out to Perry County. For some reason, that was where we found the deals, and we'd go out there on Saturdays and spend the night, sometimes Friday night, and work on stuff. So that was kind of the transition slowly that way. And then when we moved, it was like, one day I was working full-time, 5 days a week for my dad, and then, the next day we moved, and now I'm into real estate. But I didn't go full-time into real estate right away. I was working as, in fact, I kept driving back to Lanchester for about a year, a couple days a week, and then I was working for a friend as a general carpenter, and thankfully, I hated it enough that pushed me to get into real estate faster. And not knocking him or anything. It's just I'm just not that guy that's a general laborer. So it was kind of gradual. But once we made the move, then it was, we had to do it. It was got to get it done. So, but I didn't look at it as really scary.
How about you, Jake? I know you were with B&D for quite a few years, big part of that team. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was easy, but I also wouldn't say it was that hard. And I think part of that is, so I bought my first rental property in 2015, and I didn't quit my job until 21. So
Did you have go ahead.
I had some time to build that up.
You accumulated a couple good number.
A few, yeah, not a big number, but yeah. So it wasn't like I was, sleeping in my office and eating noodles, that type of thing that what you hear about. It was more of just, So I started watching my net worth a little bit, see where it's coming from, what it's doing, and I started realizing, well, interesting, like my net worth was growing more off of my investments in my rental properties than what I was getting paid for the whole year. And it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, what would happen if I put all my energy into that part of it? So, no, it wasn't that hard. Plus, I started working with these guys with Acquired Timber, and it seemed pretty solid. So it was a little scary, of course, getting away from that monthly paycheck or bi-weekly paycheck, but yeah, it wasn't like some of the stories you hear.
Yeah.
What was like, you have to remind me.
You taking the jump into full-time real estate. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I had what kind of made me, I mean, like I said before, it was kind of inspiration or desperation mode, and I was kind of in desperation, but I started a trucking business, so I was hauling sheds. A lot of you guys know what that is. So I had 2 trucks, I forget if I had 3 trucks at one, I think I had 3 trucks at one point. And I was working from, I'd get up at 3:30 in the morning, get home at 10 o'clock, right back up at 3 o'clock the next morning. And I did that for 3 years, and then I was married, and we had a kid, and that lifestyle was just not going to work anymore. So that's when I switched. I sold everything in the trucking business, and then lost money on that in the end. But went and worked a regular, I guess you call it regular 6 to 5 job again. And even that just kind of seems stressful. It's like, man, I got to make some kind of a change because something's not working. It's either, I don't know. What I was doing did not seem to pan out to meet the goals and places I wanted to go. So that's when I had decided, and that's when I talked with John, and he's the one who kind of pushed me to say, you just got to go all in. So that's what I did. I went all in. I was not making very much money at the start, but just kind of, I don't know. I can't tell you how we did it. It just worked out that way, I guess. I mean, it's not rocket science. So.
And how many years ago was that you went full-time?
It would have been, I think it's 5 years ago, a little over 5 years now.
Yeah. Good. It's amazing. So we're going to have probably some time for Q&A at the end, but if you guys have questions throughout here, as we did a bit ago, if we're on a specific topic and you have a burning question for that, raise your hand, whatever. Certainly field some questions as we go here. So having said that, any questions on the last comments there? If not, we'll keep right on cruising. So having said what we just talked about there, taking the jump that you did, let's pretend that you have the opportunity to give yourself advice. What would you say to the you of 6 or 8 years ago? If you would be advising yourself back then, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself 6 to 8 years ago?
Dream big and take action.
That's it?
I think it's all mindset. And I still have limiting beliefs now, but I had limiting beliefs then that I worked through. And so probably the biggest thing that you can actually do, because mindset's kind of a tough one to wrap your mind around, really. But one of the biggest things is getting around the right people. I think everyone would agree with that. Rooms like this and others, and I didn't do that at first because I thought you don't share things, you don't share your secrets and whatever. And once I started getting around the right people and into groups like this, things just went like this real fast. And it wasn't like, we all of a sudden decided, oh, let's check the MLS now for listings because we decided to do this. It just kind of happened. So I would say get around the people that you want to be like and that are going where you want to go, and amazing things happen.
So 8 years ago, 2015, buy as much real estate as you possibly can. Dream big, dream bigger. So 2015 was a big turning point in my life. I was searching and did not realize it. I wasn't sure what I'm searching for. It was kind of a darker period in my life, and somebody suggested a couple Instagram posts or whatever that I should follow maybe. And this one caught my eye. It was a list of 10 books that everybody should read. And up to that point, I've read Party Boys and stuff like that, but nothing that really helped me at all. So I was like, sure. So I went on Amazon and ordered 4 of the books and started reading. And oh my goodness, I went bonkers. That year I read like 20 books between business books and spiritual books, and my whole life took a turn. And wrote my goals down for the first time after reading The Compound Effect, Darren Hardy. It was a big year, big starting year for me. So I would just dream even bigger and just, buy, as much real estate as you possibly can in 2015.
All right, so I think the number one piece of advice was similar to what you said. I think what I wrote down when you emailed me the questions was to think big. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that I would be where I am today. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, so yeah, I would say think bigger and have a lot of faith in that it's possible, because I only went 8 grades in school. I thought, how in the world am I gonna hit the goals that I have? Abnormal heart rate. I must be nervous. So I only went 8 grades in school, so it took a little while for me to realize that, look, this is definitely possible for me. I just got to get out there, get around the right people, and make it happen. So yeah, that's what I would have said to myself.
That's good. Jake, I'd like to dive a little deeper on the woodland stuff. How do you, I mean, the most obvious thing, of course, is timber. There's marketable timber. But tell us some other ways that you guys have found. You mentioned solar very briefly. Tell us more about that. So how are you making money on these timber deals? How does this work?
Well, you get a really good team. You got a really good team, Clason. We've got a few of them here. Like that first one we bought in PA, that was a huge timber play. And so we kind of got lucky on that. But yeah, outside of that, so if you can buy something and it makes sense all day long with just the timber, and you start adding some other things like, smaller land sales, you buy a big piece for so much an acre, you break it out into small pieces, you might get 3, 4, 5 times per acre on those land sales. And then, the solar, we hadn't really planned on that. We really didn't, and that just kind of fell into place. But yeah, if you have a large tract of land and you're within 2 miles of transmission line that can take more capacity, absolutely, you can reach out to some developers and see if it's a fit. It has to be relatively flat. I think they can do 5% grade on north, east, or west, maybe 13% on the south slope. But yeah, you can, if they actually build it and put the panels on, our rate goes to a number that is close per year to what we gave an average for on the land itself. So think about that, that's a 30-year deal, 2% increase every year, and then an option for another 10 years after that. So that's a big deal for us now. Going forward is on new properties, which the next 2 that we bought last year, we have a solar deal on both of those. A couple thousand acres lease option, and then we'll see what they end up with. So yeah, that's a big deal for us. And of course, there's hunting leases, which covers your taxes and maybe your insurance. Short-term rental is still a bit of a we're building that out, but it takes capital to get started, so we're not seeing a return on that yet. Plus, it takes a lot of time for the whole land development thing and all that stuff. But yeah, so those are a few revenue streams that we can come up with.
Solar deals. So what exactly does that look like? So you guys aren't putting the solar panels out, right? So what exactly does that arrangement look like?
So they want a typically 5 to 7 year development period or lease option period, whatever they call it, where they'll pay, so we're getting maybe an average of 30 to, probably around average is $30 an acre for lease option, which gives them the option to lease it in the future within 5 to 7 years. And then they go do their studies and their tests and their surveys, whatever they all need to do. Then if it goes into construction, then it bumps up to I think around 300 to 350 an acre on the land that they're actually constructing. So they start out with, so right now across the whole portfolio we have about 6,500 acres under lease option. But then, they'll narrow that down to where they actually want to build and pay us, I think, $350 or so while they're doing construction, which could be up to 2 years. And then once they actually get everything built, get everything online, then you go to your $1,000 an acre or whatever.
Which is more than you guys paid for the land.
Not quite.
Almost, yeah.
Are these private investors or is this the government coming in and?
These are private developers. They will end up selling it to, they're looking at selling it to Amazon or, you know, some big corporation. But yeah, they're private developers.
To power their facilities? Is
Right.
that- Okay.
Yeah. That way they can say their warehouses are, you know, solar powered. or
Right.
whatever, you know. Yeah.
So if they want to do a big solar field, whatever, I'm assuming everything gets clear cut?
Yeah, we get to sell the trees first.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's right. Clear cut everything. They come in and do the stumping and grubbing and everything, the regrading, whatever they need to do. But yeah, we get the chance to take all the trees off first, which
Yeah.
works out great.
Yeah, you said about, I forget how you worded that, but basically if you can buy it, that it basically makes sense just based on the timber value. So what have you guys been able to do based on what you're paying for the land? What is how much of that can you recoup just in timber?
So our first one, probably all of it and a little more. We're probably not going to get that lucky again. But, you know, yeah, I don't know what you guys would say on the other two, but the first one we'll be able to get more just in timber than what we paid.
Nice.
Was that because the timber was exceptional, or?
Ernie's a timber guy. I think we have to ask Ernie all the timber questions, but regardless, it sounds pretty amazing. And yeah. Any other questions on that, Sam?
Do you have any income on carbon credits, selling carbon credits at this point, or is that?
We don't, no. And I do get asked that a bit. So we're in talk with probably 5 different carbon credit companies. It's all kind of the same. It's just not big enough in the States at this point. Their numbers. So the other thing they want to do is they want to control everything you own in that LLC. So it's not like you can just say, hey, we're not going to be cutting that piece there, go ahead and collect carbon credits. No, they want to control the whole piece. And they don't want you to cut trees more than the growth rate, 5% or so a year. So for us, it hasn't even been close to worth it at this point. So will that come? Maybe.
Go ahead.
Or certain kind of trees, like, where's the value of timber right now? Like,
Certain kind of trees.
Varies in certain kind of trees, right?
Yeah, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what we've been hearing, the white oak is staying good. Some of the other species are down right now. Yeah, I don't know what you guys would say.
Right here?
What happens if we are allowed to open up for fracking and all that again with all the acreage? I mean, do you feel you're in a vein where that would be an open option?
I'm going to try to repeat the questions here for the sake of the video. So he's asking, and for you guys in the back too, so he's asking about possibilities on this woodland for fracking if that was to be opened up in the future.
Right, so there we might have, we think we might have maybe 1/10 of it that the mineral rights actually came with it. Most of that's been out, and on that 1/10 there's no wells or anything on there. So I wish we would, because there's a lot of wells on our properties, but we don't get anything out of that.
Another question in the back there?
Yeah, so I had a question on the hunting leases. So that sounds pretty interesting to someone like me. How do you split up a large property into hunting leases? Do you just lease it out to one party and they figure out how they want to divide it up, or do you have 500-acre lots that you lease out? How does that get split up, and then how much can you get per acre on hunting leases?
So the question is, how do you lease out the plots for hunting rights? Do you do one large plot, have them figure out how to divvy it up, and also what's the potential income off of that?
Yeah. So it was all leased out when we bought it. So we just continued the leases for the most part. There was a few that dropped out and we signed new people up. But It varies so much. I think our hunting leases there vary from about 50 to 80 acres up to 1,200 acres for one hunting club. And they might have, the 1,200 acres, they have around 40 to 50 members in that club. So, and I don't know, I think we're still in the low end. We're around probably averaging $9 an acre for hunting leases and that up there. And which is an upgrade from, I think the lowest was around $350 when we bought it, so we did up that quite a bit. So I think there's probably still some room to grow there. We want to keep them if we can. I don't know, these guys, I get so many calls and all they want to do is talk about, the last 20, 30, 40 years I've been hunting this property and this and that and the other thing. One guy actually got married in a tree stand on our property. Yeah, so this guy's pretty attached to it, so we really want to keep it. They pretty much control the property for us and keep the trespassers out and all that stuff, so we haven't pushed that a lot.
Yeah. Anything else on the land? One in the back there?
How do you convince the banks to finance a couple thousand acres?
How do you convince banks to finance a couple thousand acres of dirt and trees?
That's definitely a little more challenging. I should probably have Daniel answer that, really, but we've seen, 60 to 65% financing?
Get Dave to put his signature on it.
Yeah, get Dave's up to put the signature on it. Helps a lot. But yeah, they want to keep good track on your timber and land sales as well. Typically, they want to see 50 to 60% of your timber sales going towards principal. Same way with the land sales. But yeah, we struggled on our first one. We actually ended up getting a private loan to carry us for the first 8 months or a year till we got a bank to finance it. So it's definitely a little, till they trust you and realize you might know what you're doing on some of the stuff, but they'll be a little wary of that.
That's a good question. So we're going to pivot a little bit here. Dave, let's talk about short-term rentals in Perry County, buying a cabin in 2021. That was your first big one, right? So how many of you have walked through a property, put an offering on a property, and made some sort of a rehab budget or an estimate? How many of you guys have done that at some point, where you walk through, you make a budget for a rehab? Hands up, keep hands up high. Okay. Now, if you have never went over your budget, keep the hand up. Whoops. Anyway, so Dave will make you feel a little better. Really nice cabin that they have in Perry County, bought in 2011. 2021, almost 2 years ago. And nice property, but it needed some work, so they had a rehab budget of $85,000, and $300,000 later, they had a cabin that was ready to go. So tell us a little bit about that.
We were there last weekend for the first time, actually spending a weekend there, or a night. And we were looking back, reminiscing, looking back through the pictures, and I don't know what we've seen. We just got really excited about this red building with a waterfall, and really the only thing we seen was the waterfall, and everything else we just missed. And the crazy thing was, by the time settlement happened in June, the waterfall had dried up. So yeah, we had just a lot of major things that we didn't include in the budget. We just, we weren't going to replace the deck, weren't going to do the kitchen, weren't going to do the pond, weren't going to do the excavating, just a ton of stuff. But we also weren't going to rent it for what we are, and I'm glad we didn't know all that stuff, because it's really worked out. But yeah, we had an $85,000 rehab budget, and finished up last year around $300,000. So, but John can verify.
But it's been working well.
It's been working well, yeah. Cash flows very well, and well, we bought another one last year, so obviously something's working. So yeah.
Along those lines, I'd love to hear from each one of you guys. You guys are all involved in short-term rentals to some degree. I keep hearing a lot about, I'm experiencing personally, that market seems to be shifting a bit. What are you seeing, what are you preparing for in the near future, the next year or two, on the short-term rental? Let's start with you on that one, Benji. I don't know how involved you are. Well, yeah, you got a couple of them. You got one at the campgrounds,
Yeah.
smaller stuff.
Yeah, we've definitely noticed a big shift in the one in New York has dropped pretty significantly. We had to drop our price, and we're kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we kind of rode through the COVID section when we had everybody and their brother wanted to rent it, and now it seems like it's been a little bit more of a struggle to find people. So that's the only one really that would be independent of the campgrounds. The campgrounds themselves, like we have all of our cabins, so we have a total of 29 cabins between the two campgrounds. They'd all be on Airbnb. They're all on, they're not all on VRBO, but most of them. And then we take direct bookings as well. So those have stayed strong. I mean, the campground, and I don't know, that's why maybe I'm not the best to speak on, to talk about how that industry's going, but the campgrounds, what we've noticed too is the larger stuff. Like we have, at the one campground, we have a 8-bedroom, 9-bathroom, and that's been pretty much booked solid. So it seems like the bigger stuff's getting more attention. I don't know if Dave would say the same thing, but from what we've seen in the few bigger ones that we do have there, they seem to be doing better.
You mentioned about the 29 cabins. How big are those? What do they look like?
Yep, so it's a pretty large range. It starts from like our primitive cabins are all one room. They have electric, no running water. They have a mini fridge and a microwave, and then it goes up to the lodge, obviously with 8 bedrooms. And then that's the larger one. Most of them, on average, like they would be well, about half of them would be one bedroom, 1 bath, and then the other half's about 2 bedroom, 1 bath. So.
Do they come with dog houses?
They do not come with dog houses. We do allow pets, however, though. So. We usually, what we actually thought about is that maybe we should just ban pets from all the cabins and say, hey, we have a really good place for you to board them while you're here.
How about you, Jake? You're developing some stuff, looking to do some short-term rentals. What are you seeing?
I don't have a good gauge on that. We only have one on our timber portfolio up and running so far. We just started that, so I don't have a good gauge on that.
And what is that? What did you put on? Is that a small silk cabin or is that a big?
Yeah, it's a small park model.
Okay.
Yeah, I just put a deck on and put a hot tub on and fire ring and stuff. So it's doing well so far. But
how long? When did you get that one up and running?
About a month ago.
Okay. Yeah. And you got more coming?
We probably do. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have more coming in PA. That one's in Georgia, about an hour south of Atlanta. So in that property, we might have more coming in another year or two. See how it goes.
Sure. What are you seeing, Dave?
Give you an example. About a year and a half ago, I did a pretty in-depth search of the market and took some classes on pricing, structures, and all that. And some of you are familiar with AirDNA. They're like a platform that kind of helps you figure out what's in the market. And they weren't even available in our area. I had a real hard time getting a comp set because we were buying the lodge and I was trying to figure out, what this place going to rent for. And I wasn't sure. Like we went way conservative then. And now when you look at this same area, there's probably, and this is a small area. This isn't like the entire Pennsylvania. This is like Perry County, maybe a little bit of Dauphin. There's probably about 40 listings that show up. And that's big stuff. That's like, at least 4 bedrooms, sleeps at least 10 people. So the supply has gone up tremendously. What's interesting though is the demand has really increased as well. But I do think that the supply has now caught up to the demand, and I think that's going to start. I think our pricing is going to have to start coming down. I feel like we have a premium product, and I feel like we're having to drop our price down to normal price, and they still get the premium product. So. There's definitely, it's been harder to get bookings. We've had to push things a little bit more. We've had to play with pricing. We've had to, do some promotions to try and get everything filled up. One of the properties we have is fairly full for the summer, and it's, I don't know why that one is and the other one's not. It's interesting. One property is, one property is not. And we might go 2 weeks and hardly get a reservation, and then like last week I got about 5 of them within 2-day period. So. Their algorithms are always, changing, I think, a little bit, and hopefully you do something that, triggers it and it hits your property. So definitely it's changing, and you know, if you were going to get into it thinking that, hey, we can get $1,800 a night, 20 nights out of the month, and you finance it because, you know, based on those numbers, you're probably going to be disappointed. With that said, though, if you enjoy hosting people and you're passionate about something like that, you can still do well.
Yeah, I would certainly be seeing the same thing. I think there's going to be a continued good market for a good product if you're offering, if you're a good host and you're doing all of those things. But I really think we might be at a point where some of the more, whatever, average, below average ones are going to start dropping off. I keep hearing different things, and I never try to put too much weight on just one factor. But I heard from a wholesaler that the leads are starting to come in from short-term rental owners. Matt Weiler on his weekly phone podcast said that he knows of like 3 of them that are for sale. So I think there's still plenty of opportunity, but I think, we have flooded the market, and part of, that's partly my fault. We're the ones that have flooded it. I think it's a market that's maturing. I think I'm still excited about it, but I think the easiest season of that might be behind us. So Dave, you have, you mentioned you have 5 kids, homeschooling. I see you get your kids very involved in the properties, very much get the family involved. Talk about that a little bit. What are some of the pros and cons? Or maybe it's all pros, I don't know.
I don't know, there's not very many cons in this season of life. Yeah, so I guess I feel like we worked hard and now can just really enjoy some of this. Yeah, so as of recently, I started doing some of the homeschooling so we have 5, and the youngest wants to do what everyone else does. So he doesn't have to go to school, but we basically, he wants to. So yeah, I'm able to have 2 of them out in my office, and we do school out there, so that's not so much for Rachel. And then we'll go to one of the properties and we'll do some maintenance or talk to people or just whatever. So it's just a ton of fun, and we love interacting with the guests. Whenever we can, we get in front of the guests. So just as often as possible, because once they meet somebody, they just kind of overlook the loose door handle or the broken toilet seat, or not that we have any of that problem with our properties, but they just kind of overlook a lot of that stuff once they have that human connection. And so we just like to meet with, and we don't meet with near all our guests in person, but we like to if we can. So yeah, it's a real interesting time, and I kind of went through this guilt thing of like, everybody else is out there working, everyone else has their job, and like, shouldn't I be working? And yeah, I'm working, and it's also probably the other challenge. Probably one con is that I'm always working. So we manage our own Airbnbs, and if you're an Airbnb manager, you know that you get messages at any time. And so I had literally 11 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't matter. If I get an Airbnb bling, like, I'm checking it. Like, it's hard for me to leave my phone over there in my coat. So that's probably the one downside of doing your self-managing, is because you're kind of always on the clock. But in my opinion, the pros far outweigh that. So yeah, certainly enjoy this. And also, not everybody's, so my wife is all in, like, we do all this together, and I realize not everybody's wife is in the business, is into something like this. Mine is, so maybe it's not for you, maybe it's not the direction you need to go, but my wife is all in. She's the workhorse. She just went up to an auction today, and she went up to buy some shrubs, and she can't just buy 1 or 2. She bought $5,000 worth, and they had to deliver it with a big box truck. And so now we got to plant all these shrubs, and she bought a skid of 20, and so we're going to try to sell 10. And so if you need shrubs, well, I message her. She's got nice shrubs at a real good price. So anyway, she's the workhorse, and she gets it done, and it's a lot of fun that way.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the instance you had. What was it, 6 weeks ago? Dave and I tend to message back and forth a good bit, collaborate on this type of thing, and I forget how this conversation even started, but the guests that you had that made a mess out of your freshly seeded yard. Give us a little bit of a taste of that.
Take you back further. Our very first guest at this, beautiful lodge that we made did a bunch of damage as well. So it was quite a start out of the gate. And then we had a lot of good experiences. And then recently we have a newly seeded yard. We had to do it twice because the first time it didn't come out right. So hydro seeded, not cheap. So it was done the second time. It was nicely coming up. And they decided to take our solar fire pit that we have on the concrete patio for a reason, and they carried it out into the freshly seeded yard, and they were playing soccer and having a dance party around it. And so we get there to the property, and there's 2 inches of mud, and it was an absolute mess. And they had mud on their shoes. There was mud in the house. They had our blankets that we have for the guests. They were muddy. They tried to dry their muddy shoes in the dryer. It was a mess. The hot tub was destroyed as far as like the water. It was just terrible. Interestingly enough, though, I messaged the guy. I called him, and instead of just ghosting me, he completely took responsibility and paid whatever I asked him to pay, and that was it. He was super nice about it. And then the next guy. They might break something. We actually recently had our electric cook stove. We had an electric cooktop, and they put a big old foil pan on top of it. And apparently, you're not supposed to do that because it cracked the top. Thankfully, I had a warranty on it, but they didn't want to cover it because they said that for whatever reason that's not covered because the thing still worked. You don't cover just broken stuff. So I submitted that to Airbnb, and that got covered as well. So we've had, I don't know, probably half a dozen or more claims that have been over $500 that have always gotten covered. So a very recent guest was a bunch of 18-year-olds, because some of you guys might, you might say no to 18-year-olds. So we had a group of 25 18-year-olds come in, and they were one of the best guests we ever had. A few weeks before that, we had a group of people that older, and they were supposed to be more matured and everything else, and they were super dirty and left a bunch of trash and just made a big mess. And so we actually had a guest just over this weekend again that were real young, and they were super clean. So as far as this whole thing of 18-year-olds, I'm not afraid of them at all.
That's great. Benji, I don't know if you don't want to discuss this, it's completely fine, but you had mentioned on the phone about a campground that you're getting under contract. Correct. Super fascinating. If it's too early in the process to make it public information, completely fine.
No, I could probably share. I could try to share the details a little bit. I just won't say where it is.
Sure. And here's why I wanted to share this. Well, actually, I'll let you go ahead and kind of share the story. Then I'll have a few comments.
So I had somebody actually stay at one of our campgrounds. My manager checked him in and was just kind of chatting with them. They said, yeah, we came from a campground that the place was not friendly at all. It's kind of needs a lot of work. They were some of the neighbors weren't the greatest. So they told my manager that. My manager told me, he said, hey, that campground was kind of, they told me this campground was kind of messy, you should probably go buy it. So I was like, okay, sounds good. So I called them, and right from it was kind of actually, it's a really long story, because it's actually the same campground that we would have had under contract before we bought any of our other ones that fell through, and then we wound up getting the connection to buy our first. But anyway, they had no idea it was the same person. And I called her, and I said, hey, would you consider selling your campground? She said, yeah, we are actually. We have 2 other people who are interested in it. I said, okay, sounds good. I'll meet you tomorrow. I want to see it. So I drove up the next day, chatted with her for a while, and she said, she told me the price. They want 1.3, and she said, I want to do owner financing. I didn't ask her. She told me. And I said, okay, fantastic. What kind of terms do you think? She's like, well, can you do $100,000 down for 4% for 40 years? I said, yes, I can do that. So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like I said, people say we get lucky, but hey, I made the phone call, Everybody else could have made that same phone call, had that same meeting. All it would have took was somebody to go out and meet with that person, and they could have had the same success that and I won't call it a success yet. I mean, we don't have it actually at settlement yet. So I guess I could follow up later to make sure it actually all went through. So at this point, it seems like it's going to be good. So.
Yeah, and I love that. And some of you guys are sitting there thinking, what's like, well, that's too easy. But that's probably not the first campground owner that you've reached out to, is it?
Definitely not. I mean, I'm reaching out to campground owners at least maybe 2 a week, something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So with scale, you find success.
2 a week, like, did we hear that? So it's easy to talk about the ones like, hey, I just called this person, she said, yep, it's for sale, let's do it. 4% for 40 years, who does that?
No idea.
But hey, they set the price. And
I will say it's a little bit of a special situation. The owner, she has cancer really bad, so they're not giving her much time yet. So and then the condition the campground's in, like, it's going to need a fair amount of work, but they felt like that was going to be the only way that they could actually get it sold. So that was part of the reason. I'm not just that amazing. I'm not just an amazing negotiator. There was some other circumstances that would have led them to believe that that was the only way they could sell. So.
Great. Questions for these guys?
Yeah, Dave, so what is the financing arrangements on your Airbnbs? Were you able to find banks that were Airbnb friendly, or how did that work out?
Question is for Dave. What's the financing agreement on what's the financing arrangement on your Airbnbs, short-term rentals? How does that work with banks?
So the first property we bought as an investment property, 80% financed. I think it's 75. We haven't refinanced that, so we're way under leveraged. So that's kind of a whole conversation we can have separately. But to answer your question, it's an investment 3.69 or whatever it was back then. The cabin that we bought last year is a farmette, so we were able to get a farm loan from Burg for 25 years at 4%. And that one didn't need as much work, so we haven't refinanced any of those.
More questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, Benji, so I was wondering on your cabins, during your peak season for the 2-bed, 1-bath, or the 1-bed, 1-bath, what do they run per night?
Question is, what are your questions for Benji? What do your cabins run? 2-bed, 1-bath cabins, what do they run per night?
It's a good question. I mean, it kind of, we use yield management. I don't know what, you guys all know what yield management. So the price kind of changes based on occupancy and the busy weekends. But on our busy, like on, Penn State's our main area. So when there's a Penn State game, we have a waiting list. And we're getting, like, for a 2-bed, 1-bath, I think on those busy weekends, I think we're around like $250, somewhere around there a night. So we're in a really good market. I mean, it's really good market when there's Penn State games happening. Over COVID, that was kind of brutal, but when there's events in State College, we pack out. So.
Anything else on that, Sam? Go ahead, Sam.
So if you're looking for areas to invest in, would you recommend areas where there's sports, or are you still looking at a lot of short-term rentals for vacations?
Areas to invest. Are you looking for areas where there's attractions, sports, destinations? What are you looking for? Who's for Benji or for anyone?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we've chosen to kind of focus on the State College market just because we know what we can get per night. So as far as me telling you a specific area to invest in, I chose to focus on the State College market with the campground industry because I know what I can get. Outside of that, I don't know. I would be the right person to tell you the areas to go into, just because I chose to focus on one market. So.
Is there a season, because you're in State College, of like when you're busier or not busier? And then also, is there a season with the dog stuff as well, or is it just when people are going out on vacation?
Yeah, it's definitely. They're both very seasonal. Yeah, the dogs would mean that's also when people are going on vacations through the summer. That's when the kennels are hopping. In the wintertime, it's going to slow down a lot, and the campgrounds will be the same way.
I think it's going to be a very important question as we continue in the short-term rental business. That's a good question, Sam. And I've told a lot of people this, like when they're asking about a certain area for short-term rental, and it seems like this should be obvious, but you really have to think of why somebody would want to stay there. And there's many different reasons. You know, you could have a cabin that's very remote. It could be nothing around there for an hour, and it can become a destination if it holds 16, 20, 24 people, whatever. It can still work because it's a destination, they want to go there to hang out there. It's going to work not as good once there's more options in that area that are in closer proximity to larger cities, whatever. And I think what a lot of people don't realize too is some of the Airbnbs are taking the place of a hotel. The cabins that we're talking about are not, or very rarely. Sometimes people will go there because there's an event in the area and they need a place to sleep, they need a place to stay. But usually it's for a very different reason. And so I have become much more aware of being close to where there's multiple reasons for somebody to be there. So maybe if you can have a destination place that's also close to a ski slope, close to water, close to a wedding venue, I mean, you're going to be really hard pressed to have all of those things stacking up for you. But you really want to think about that for larger properties. It has to be a big reason for people to go there because there is a lot of options. I got into the business 3+ years ago, and I mean, that's fairly recent in my opinion, but a lot has changed in the last 3.5 years. Definitely seeing a decline on some of that stuff. So we're going to shift a little bit here, got about another 15 minutes. So it's easy to talk about, you know, the success, things that are going right, things that are fun. But we would be naive to think that there's not also challenges and obstacles and stuff. So what are some challenges that you guys are currently working through? Benji, go for it.
So I think for us, probably the biggest challenge is the new campground. We're trying to build RV spots and trying to cut through red tape with DEP, the township, permits. I think we've had permits submitted now for a year and we still don't have an answer. I think I did finally bug the state representative enough now that I think I have an answer coming on Friday, but that's been the most frustrating thing. I mean, that affects your numbers, affects our projections, what we thought we could do with the property. Fortunately, everything else has done well enough, has done much better than we thought with the cabins and the lodge, that it's worked out, but we're just, you know, we had to wait a year to build the RV spots, so there's no revenue in that section we thought we would at this point. So that's more so just focused on the campground industry. Outside of that, I'm more so involved with just the campgrounds. So that would be the most challenging part for me at this point.
I would probably back that up on challenges. So as for their land development side of things, we have, if we wouldn't have to deal with stormwater management, land development plans, DEP, oh my goodness, we could get so much more done. It's just unreal. And then we also, you know, we had an engineer working for us that just drug things out really, really far, and we finally had to get rid of him and get a new one on, so that was very challenging. So getting the right people on board to help you out, and then also just, working through all the regulatory stuff. It's definitely one of the bigger challenges.
I think for us right now, our challenge is building systems and developing people. Sometimes we just assume that, you know, because we're all entrepreneurs, right? We get it done, you just do it, you just assume that everybody else would have the same eye for excellence. And they don't. And then they said they're going to do a deep clean, and then you go check it and it's not even as good as your regular clean, or so just building a team. And the thing is, so often it comes back to me. It's my responsibility. It was my fault. I never even put the expectations out there, and so probably our biggest challenge is me developing myself to work and develop other people to do what I want them to do, and not just try to do it all myself.
That's really good. Jake, back to you for a minute here. So you went from, I'm not sure what you did when you were with B&D, But in the role that you're at now, you gotta have like all these loose ends going all of the time. How do you manage that? How do you know, when you go to work tomorrow morning, how do you know what you're gonna be working on? Has that been a challenge?
That was a challenge at B&D.
Oh, really?
So I was project manager there, so we had sometimes, 5 or 6 jobs going at the same time, and I would say where I'm at now is a lot simpler than where I was then. I actually missed that. When I quit B&D, that was one of the unexpected challenges, was not having the phone ring as much, not getting so much emails. Like, I kind of thrived in that, and just to all of a sudden be like, in the world, there's only like 5 emails all day, like, what's going on? So to the point where, like, I don't know, you kind of thrive in that. So that was probably one of my bigger unexpected challenges, going from one to the next, is not having so much chaos, or however you would say. And that was, honestly, that was some of the, we're kind of, in our culture, whatever, we don't really take time to think. Like, we're always busy. So that actually kind of forced me to have some time to think, and some time to plan some things out, and that's good. And that was honestly not very easy for me, is to slow down and actually plan some stuff out. So yeah, that was unexpected, but it's probably, it's less chaotic than it was back when I was project manager. So
That's great. That's not the answer I was expecting, but that's great. And I normally, when we have whoever the speaker is, I normally shoot out their contact information with the email the next day, so maybe we can all send Jake a couple emails. Getting back to a little bit more sense of normal. How about, let's think a little bit about, so we all have limited beliefs. I mean, no matter where we are in the journey, no matter where we are, we have limited beliefs, that limit what we do. So can you guys think about what might be a limiting belief that you have overcome, and how you have overcome it? Doesn't matter.
I think for me it would have been money, in that there's a limit of money, and that there's not an abundance of money, and that it's not available. Whereas now, if I have the right deal, that's my last concern, is like, where's the funding going to come from? So that would have probably been one that I've overcome.
And you overcame that simply by taking action, going down that path, and just doing.
My first flip property I bought on auction.com without stepping foot on the property. I probably wouldn't do that today, but like, it was auction. Like, I just clicked the button and I bought it, and I had to figure it out. I've done that a few times since, where I would buy something and the money is out there. People are happy to give you money if you're going to do good things with it. So it's good.
I would say one that I had is that I could make more money, or that everybody could make more money investing as a team versus by myself. I always kind of thought, well, if you have a team, everybody gets a share of that. That's probably not so good for me. But it's completely the opposite. So when we started with the choir, it was like, it just kind of blew my mind that a couple different guys coming together could create so much more than what each individually could create. So that was probably, was one I had.
So I would say mine was probably my education, honestly. I just thought there was no way I could be super successful with only an 8th grade education. I don't know, that was just one of the things that I thought I had to change, which I was intentional with making, and the way I overcame that, I guess, would have been 5 years ago when I did make that shift. I signed a commitment that I'm going to read for 20 minutes every single day for the rest of my life. And I think that's a huge factor for where I am. It was me making that decision. Now I read on average, I don't know, 30 minutes a day, 45 minutes, kind of varies, but reading every single day was a big one for me. We actually have it in our operating agreement that as partners we're required to read every single day. So we're very serious about personal education and like, or you know, make yourself better. And you know, I never thought I'd get my real estate license, but I decided, hey, I'm gonna go out and get my real estate license. So I went through the process and made it happen. So, I overcame it by, I don't know what you'd say, I guess. I just decided I was going to. So,
Action. Action. We have time for a couple questions, if you guys got a few more questions. Galen?
So are you going to be sharing each of their contact information?
Yeah. Yep, unless they
I
tell me
know
not to.
My wife did the same thing as your wife, but instead of $5,000 worth of shrubs, it was $500. Now, she didn't do her shopping spree this year yet, so I'd like to get in contact with you and take some shrubs off your hand.
I would be glad if you would. Just to note, she bought it with personal money. So then Halifax Inn, Pine Hollow Lodge, and Ridgetop Cabin are all going to have to buy from her. So she'll probably end up breaking even at least.
surely there's an auctioneer in here somewhere we could just auction them all.
Kevin?
Back to the dog sitting. You're buying existing ones and trying to get them better, or do you start from nothing? And how do you attract clients?
So the question is, are you, in the dog, the pet boarding, are you buying existing facilities, or are you developing new ones, and how do the clients, how do they find you?
Yeah, so we're buying all existing. All of them are run by older people, and we're buying them from them. Management usually is pretty bad, and most of them are running them, like if somebody makes a reservation, they're writing it down on a piece of paper and sticking it in a drawer. So when we buy them, we literally get boxes of cards with all the customer information that we have to input. And then the way we track everything, we have it's called Ginger. It's a dog boarding. It's a software designed for the boarding industry, I guess you could say. It's amazing. So that's how we track all of our customers. That's how we keep track of all the reservations and everything.
How long has the pet boarding thing been a thing?
I have no idea. For me, it's been 5 years, so I don't know. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be able to tell. I mean, some of these that we've bought have been in business for 20 years, so it's been around for a while. I think it's just not something that everybody looks for. So.
Anybody else?
How much did COVID play in kind of stopping things for a while and then starting again? How much have you seen since COVID of how tech is helping you or hurting you or whatever?
So how did COVID affect the pet boarding?
Yeah, COVID was brutal. I mean, nobody went on vacation. The reservations dropped off hard. So COVID was pretty bad. We would have started buying them like right when COVID started. So it would only majorly affected one. The others were. And then since COVID, it's rebounded like crazy. So reservations have been amazing after COVID. It seemed like everybody over COVID bought pets, and now they all need places to keep them. So it's rebounded pretty well.
And are all the pets doodles? Seems like everything's a doodle.
Are all the pets doodles? No, they're definitely not all doodles. We get a little bit of everything. So we've I think we even boarded a rabbit already. So we had somebody one time who wanted us to board their pig, but we did not. We didn't take that one.
Anybody else?
So Benji, you were saying that you put some of your cabins on Airbnb, VRBO, and on your website. Do all your calendars sync?
They do, yes. So we use a software company called Resnexus, RESNEXUS. They are incredible. I researched a lot of campground software before we bought the first campground. Researched probably 7 different campground reservation softwares. They were by far the best. Kind of a one-stop shop because you can do marketing, pretty much everything through them. and all the calendars sync directly with them. So it's great. I can take a direct booking, and it actually allows me to change the rates. So it pulls my rates from my software onto VRBO and Airbnb, and then I can set an adjustment on there to automatically up at 5% if I want. So I make the same amount on Airbnb reservation as I do a direct booking.
Do you also do you put campsites and RV sites on Airbnb?
We don't. We have a couple RV, like camper rentals we do have on Airbnb, but the sites themselves we do not at this point. I know it's kind of something that's starting, and our software is constantly integrating with new OTAs. So there's some new ones coming, like RV Spot. I don't know, some of them, I don't know if I'm saying that right. There's a couple new ones that are coming on that are basically taking the Airbnb idea to the campgrounds for their spots.
That's good. Can do one more question if someone has one. If not, I'm going to finish it off with 2 questions for you guys yet. Benji, you kind of talked about reading, but what are some daily disciplines that you guys do?
Yeah, so for us it's reading every single day. We have to read every single day. There's some pretty brutal consequences if we miss a day. So.
And what is that?
So if you're out, man, I'd have to look back. It's been a while. So you have to take a cold shower for 7 days. Must be on call the whole way for 2 minutes, I think is why we have it on there. And then we have to change all the diapers while we're at home the whole time. I forget what the other ones are. But, you have to sleep on the floor with no blanket or pillow. We read every day. We don't usually try to do this. So that would be one, and then exercise is another one. So we have to, with that same accountability group, we have to read every single day, and we exercise at least 10 minutes every 25 days out of every single month. So that's what we use as daily discipline.
Good. Good.
Yeah, so I'm not as disciplined as a lot of guys, but I do try mornings. Decided I'm going to get up a little bit earlier. That's maybe half a year ago when I started this, and read the Bible for 20 minutes, or mostly read the Bible or meditate or whatever. So that's been a big one for me. I think I'll probably stick with. Other than that, Darren daily pretty much every morning, and then evenings I'll come home and usually go run for a few miles before we have our dinner. So don't get it done every evening, but I'm committed to 10 miles a week. So usually it's 5 nights, but make up for the weekend if I need to.
Sure.
So that's pretty much all I got on that.
Yeah, I'm not either your most disciplined guy, but we do have an accountability group that we every month set our own goals and share it with. There's about 4 of us, and it can be like exercise, drinking water, whatever you want to make it. We actually in April didn't do it because just took a month break. But anyway, that's been real helpful. I've actually been a real surprise at how much I slacked in April after not having that accountability group. So, and it can be anything, like from reading to, like I said, drinking water or your diet, or giving people affirmation, or whatever it might want to be. But I think the accountability group is huge, although we're not near that hardcore. It's good. Top 1 or 2 book recommendations from each of you guys for a final question. And I know there's probably 20 you could spit out. Yeah, I honestly don't enjoy reading that much. I do listen to a lot of Audible. So some of the ones I've been enjoying recently are some of the most impactful ones probably have been Compound Effect. And I really enjoyed, it's called Go Giver. Maybe it's called The Go Giver. Dave Zook had recommended it a while back. Really good book. Some of the ones that I've just recently read, one is Thou Shalt Prosper by Daniel Lapin. And another one's called Time, Money, Freedom from Ray Higdon. That was a good book. It was a lot about money mindset.
Good books, yeah. For me, I would say probably the most recent one I read was The Emigrant Edge by Brian Buffini. Super good book. Has a lot of really good points. Talks a lot about gratitude. One thing he mentions in there is gratitude and entitlement cannot coexist. You cannot have a victim mentality and have gratitude at the same time. So I thought that was really good. The other one would be, this is going back, I read this one in 2015 too, I believe. Wild at Heart, John Eldredge. Really good book. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with real estate, but just, yeah, it's a really good book.
So I recommend 3. I don't know if I could say I have like a set favorite, but I'll just say 3 that I really enjoyed. So Never Split the Difference. I don't know if I can tell you their authors either, but if you look it up, you'll find it. Never Split the Difference is amazing. The Richest Man in Babylon, fantastic book. Homeless to Billionaire is another one that's amazing. 3 books that definitely my favorites.
Okay, well, very good. We are at just after 8:30. We're going to wrap it up. But yeah, if you guys don't mind, I will shoot out your contact information in the email tomorrow in case somebody wants to follow up. They need some shrubs, or they need a place for their dog, or their pigs, or...
Do you want the 10 emails staggered every hour?
So how about a big hand for these guys? Yeah, thanks for participating, guys. We, like I said at the beginning, this is a stretch for all of us up here. Like when I reached out to these guys, they had varying degrees of like, well, I don't, you know, but they all said yes. So really appreciate it. It's good. It's really good. So I think that's all that I had. And so we'll meet you back here the first week in June if you choose to come. And in the meantime, meet some new people. We get the room till usually around 10 o'clock. So got some time to network and meet some new people and make some connections tonight then. So thanks for coming.